in between. And now, your hosts, Jordan Hansen and Brandon Meinert.
And Matt Lamb. We'll get Matt on there at some point. We'll get that on. Anyway, welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Founders Pod. Happy to have you with us wherever you are, whenever you are. Grateful that you were joining us and making us a part of your day. My name is Brandon Meinert, here with our co-hosts Jordan Hansen and Matt Lamb.
All right.
Hey. Guys, welcome.
We're here.
We're here. You're there. We're here in the United Commercial Insurance studio broadcasting. United Commercial Insurance, business insurance of any type. Give us a call. Workers' comp, general liability, umbrella, cyber insurance, kind of a big deal recently. Commercial auto, commercial property, any of that stuff. Give us a call, 208-229-8222. Again, that's 208-229-8222. I'm going to introduce this week's guest. We're excited. I've known this week's guest for a long time. 8 years? No, 13 years, I think, roughly.
You said
a long time.
Yeah.
13 years. We've eaten a lot of pizza together.
Yes.
Anyway, this week's guest, we're excited to have him on. Done a lot of different businesses. Most recently, he's working with McFarland Ritter, a law firm here in Boise, specializing in business cases, oftentimes construction focused. This week's guest is Seth Hansen. Seth, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Excited to have Seth on. Seth's a really good guy.
Seth Hansen, no relation to Jordan Hansen.
I was just
We
wondering.
don't know about that. I mean, they're both Ian, so we spell it right.
Danish.
Danish, the Danish side. That's right. Owen is the Swedish side.
Yeah.
That's right.
We'll
Is
have
that
to
what it
talk.
is?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
No relation, though, that you know of.
I don't think so. You base. How long have you been in this area?
80s.
Yeah, my parents have been here for a while. Middleton is where a lot of my family.
Yeah, mine's from eastern Idaho, so
Yeah, probably different.
probably
The Hansen family line.
A few
Somewhere.
generations, probably somewhere. Huh?
somewhere.
Have you ever done that like genealogy app where you like
How many? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
where you're in the room?
And you say like, this person's your 15th cousin
Yeah.
or whatever.
My wife's my 10th cousin.
Gross.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should have checked that before you got married.
I should have. Well, they didn't have it. You guys have never done that with
Yeah, I've done it. Yeah.
and your wife.
Yeah.
You're not related to your wife.
I don't think I like not in the yeah.
I don't care.
Have
To
you
Well, it
tried
was
it?
I
like
think
literally.
I'm 10th cousins too, so that's
Yeah, I
Both
mean,
of you guys,
know,
gross.
Yeah.
it was awkward.
Yeah,
I don't
well,
want to share how close our.
if you're less
Can't
than
disclose this.
5, you may want to be careful.
Not in public.
You may want to be careful with that. Well, anyway, Seth and I. So when we first started, I was really into pizza ovens.
Are you not anymore?
Not as much.
Oh,
My intestines don't work as well when I eat as much pizza as
Some
I
prices
was
are willing to be are worth paying.
or worth paying.
For Brandon's pizza, that's true. That
was
was
a good pizza.
It was good pizza. I
It
know
was
I've
good
had that pizza. Yeah,
The first oven Matt Lamb and I built
I know. And now it's dead, isn't it? Rip Pizza.
took rip.
Someone
That only
destroyed it.
That was like it cost like $5,000 for like 2 pizzas. And then,
It had a sturdy foundation.
no, it didn't.
No,
well,
the
the
foundation was
foundation
solid.
is still there. Anyway, well, we had a good time.
Yeah.
But I followed Seth throughout his career, and we've talked. You know, it's been a while since we've talked, and always been interested. And he's, I think, done a really good job in the different places that he's at. And when we started this, I thought of him, and we'll get to know more of his story and what he's gone through and what his family's done there. But anyway, Seth, if you wouldn't mind just kind of describing what you're doing now at the law firm you're at, kind of what your focus and emphasis is.
Are you a lawyer then?
I am.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
That's okay. No, you look sharp. You look like a lawyer. You know, you got
Just
the
kidding.
nice dress.
Yeah, I'm dressed better than all three of them.
Seriously, we're kind of embarrassing here.
You
You're kind of
don't, you don't have
embarrassing.
a hood on.
Yeah, Seth took off his tie as he walked
He
in.
told me it was come to work with a hoodie Friday,
Thursday.
except Thursday. I'm an attorney at McFarland Ritter. I do mostly business law, so I help clients to set up new businesses, and I also draft contracts and agreements all the time for businesses. I do estate planning and construction litigation as well. So
Nice. Construction litigation. What type of litigation would that typically?
so especially during the pandemic, A lot of people put together businesses or put together buildings a little shoddy.
I was gonna say poorly.
Yes, poorly.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Actually, during the pandemic, I think there was a labor shortage and several other factors. I think supplies. There was supply chain issues, and between all of that, we just have people coming to our firm a lot that have commercial buildings or residential homes that just weren't built right.
So that means let's say I had a house built. Suddenly my roof collapses. I go and say, hey, they're messing this up. Let's go sue them and get is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There was a big case so our international listeners won't know this, but there's a city in Meridian. And city in Meridian. Our international, yeah, reach out to us and I'll give you the maps. But we have there's a city in Meridian, and then the city of Meridian built this really big city hall. Do you remember this?
Yes.
And they sued the contractor.
That's still there, the city hall, right? That's the really nice
city
one.
hall still
right on Meridian Road.
Yeah, and they sued the contractor, Petra. I don't know if we can say it or not. Anyway, it's like
I don't know why we couldn't be able
well,
to.
we could.
It's not my client.
Yeah. Anyway,
You just did.
I said deal with it.
You said it.
Sue me. Don't sue it. Don't do that. Anyway,
You'll be represented by Seth.
Seth will represent me.
Right.
So anyway, they sued the contractor. I don't know exactly why. There had been complaints about the build quality, or there'd been complaints about something, and so they ended up suing. And then Petra won, and all the attorney fees got paid by the city of Meridian. And I remember sitting down with the mayor at one random meeting, and that's all she talked about. And because it was like $2 or $3 million worth of attorney fees, and we're like, that's cool. We had to pay for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought it was interesting.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's interesting line of work.
Maybe if City of Meridian would have used Seth,
Yeah.
maybe they wouldn't have lost.
Yeah. Well, that's
Hindsight.
You don't live in Meridian, do you?
I do actually, just barely.
So
You're paying for that.
Yeah.
You're paying,
That's right.
You could have not only
Dang it.
if they would have paid you.
and you would have paid yourself.
That would have been
almost.
weird, right?
Saved
Because
a
it's like
lot of
I'm
Lose.
paying these taxes.
Wait.
They go to my pocket.
Yeah.
Seth,
Anyway.
is there a more common outcome that you see when these lawsuits happen, or going after these builders that do shoddy work? Is it like, hey, we can't do anything, or what typically happens?
Well, when it goes into litigation, actually builders, for the most part, I think it's 95% of cases settle.
Yeah.
Is that like I feel like that stat could apply to like almost everything though, right?
Sure.
Most people like settle. They don't want to go to litigation, right?
No, they don't. So litigation starts by settling. I mean, they don't go to trial.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually what happens is between them and insurance companies and all these different parties that are involved, somebody steps up and says, hey, we need to figure this out. And they start to work together and say, okay, we'll pay this much. We'll pay this much. I think most people want to guarantee their work. They want to, put their name behind their work and do a good job. And even if they make a mistake up front, they try to fix it later. That's been my experience. But sometimes it doesn't go that way. So
You seem like optimistic, people-loving lawyer, which it seems like lawyers are mostly on the skeptical side, right?
Soul-sucking, dark people.
Well, I wasn't going to say that part, but I think typically they're like that's why they're really strict about, well, I don't really trust anyone. That's why I have the contract here. But you're like, I bet they all want to do the right thing. They all want to.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
all good people.
that's just experience. That's just
Yeah.
experience. I think most people end up settling. I'm probably being too optimistic that they want to settle and that they, want to do
Right.
that. But I try to look at best case and, think the best of people, even when I'm opposed to them.
Yeah. Is that a lot of residential or mainly commercial buildings?
Yeah,
stuff?
percentage-wise. What would you say percentage-wise?
Our firm, it's probably half and half.
Okay.
Because residential, it's so emotional.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
even
my home.
This
commercial.
is my house.
Even commercial, if you think of a business owner who's your audience, if you're building a building for your business, like you've got a lot of heart
Yeah,
into
you got
that.
your business name on the the building, and then all of a sudden they made it crappy. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's falling down. Customers are inside and they see issues with it. It's personal.
Embarrassing, right? Yeah.
Well-
Now 50% caseload. Now what about revenue wise? It's got to be greater. Revenue wise, probably is commercial.
Commercial, yeah.
Yeah, 80-20 perhaps something. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, cool. Well, I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more, but you said your family originated from eastern Idaho. Is that right?
Well, my dad's side, yeah, he's from Teutonia. Do you know where that is?
Is that like Jackson Hole, Wyoming area?
Grand
But on
Teton.
the Idaho side
Yeah.
Okay.
of the Tetons, yeah.
Teutonia.
Yeah.
That sounds like
and the Grad Teton relay, I remember running through there.
Yeah.
Teutonia.
Yeah. That's the only time I've ever heard
Hey,
of
my
it.
wife's done that relay.
That relay is a blast.
Yeah.
And I'm not a runner, and I never did it again, but it really was a great time.
It was that much fun.
It really, I mean, honestly, I don't like running, but the fact is I have really fun memories.
Teutonia sounds like a place on a Disney show. Oh, let's go to Teutonia.
Anyway,
Princess
if you
of-
put IA at the end,
Yeah,
it's
it
all
really
like
does.
Transylvania.
So it's the most beautiful place in the world because the Tetons are right there.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of summer, but it has a winter that lasts probably 9 months, and you're under 10 feet of snow, and they're trying to farm in those conditions. It was a terrible place to.
Wait, did you grow up there, you said?
No, my
Your
dad
dad
was
did, yeah.
born there and then moved to Burley,
Okay.
and my mom's from all over the place, Texas, California, those areas, but yeah, that's where the Hansens come from.
There we go. Your Hansens.
Yep, my Hansens.
Yeah.
Burley. And then were you born? Where were you born at?
Provo, Utah. Very popular
Oh.
place to be born.
Were they in college?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you the oldest of a large
Oldest of 6, yeah.
of 6?
Big family.
Okay. And then I guess tell us that story. Like your parents, what they study, what were they doing? You know, all that stuff. Kind of maybe give us a little.
Sure. My mom was a psychology major. She graduated in psychology from BYU.
That's a dangerous profession
It's
for a mom to
dangerous
have.
for their kids, yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like they're going to figure out a way to manipulate you into doing stuff like your room. And
Or psychoanalyze everything you're doing. My dad was a Middle Eastern studies major. So he wanted to be a diplomat or,
Oh, it's like politics. Not politics.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I see it.
like the State Department?
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So he lived in Israel for a short time, worked on a kibbutz, learned Hebrew. And
What is a kibbutz?
so it's a communal farm.
Oh.
That's where you go without shoes.
No, it isn't. You made that up.
No. Did you guys ever see WeWork? That guy?
Yeah.
He grew up on a kibbutz.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he like didn't wear shoes ever in that communal family kind of village type.
Huh.
Okay. Well, anyway.
I'll have to ask my dad about
The
that. I
shoe
don't
thing
know.
maybe is.
Because he like didn't wear shoes at the office, right?
Yeah.
Or
He would like
something
walk
that.
down
Yeah.
New York without shoes.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. A kibbutz.
Yeah, so he had this crazy background. He was a missionary in Tahiti, so he learned Tahitian and French, and he just
Liked other cultures.
liked other cultures. Went around Northern Africa and Europe after his mission, and just to hang out.
Wow.
And then he turned into this just serial entrepreneur, like nothing to do with any of that, any of his education or anything. And he always told us as kids, don't major in business, don't major in finance or anything stupid like that. And major in something that you just really enjoy, because you'll be in business the rest of your life and
Like it doesn't matter. You're going to be in business anyway.
doesn't matter. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And then you majored in law.
Well, I majored in American Studies undergrad,
Yeah.
There you
which when I was getting close to graduating and realized that no one would pay me to study America, I
I bet
decided
there's a few people
law
out there.
school was a good fallback. So
That's
I
funny.
did go to law school.
You know, when I hear about people in, I don't know when that was, the 70s that your dad was going around, or the 60s or whenever, but I always think, how did they book a plane ticket and then a hotel without the internet? Like for me, it's like you just kind of like, you have all of that stuff planned,
You got a call, right? It's just a phone call, probably.
but how do you
Yeah.
even get, how do you get the number? That's something
in
we're
the
going to
phone
get into.
book.
Yeah.
Well, you
Gonna
don't
get into that.
You show
Foreshadowing.
up.
Well, that's pretty good.
You show up and just figure it out. That's what happened. He'd find a youth
No
hostel.
way. You
Yeah,
show.
totally.
Oh, really?
Well, how do you call a hotel in Morocco?
No, you
From
should.
You
like
don't. You just
Idaho.
show up in Morocco and you just
Figure it out.
Figure it out.
That's crazy.
That's true. That's a lot different traveling, huh? I feel like super confident. You go to any country, it's like, Google will tell me where to go.
That's right.
Yeah.
Google can translate.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so then he came back, and you said he was serial entrepreneur. Did he start a bunch of
graduated.
different things?
What made his decision to change? Why did he not go into the State Department?
I'll have to ask him that. You know, I just think for some people, entrepreneurship is just in their blood. And he started selling. He sold medical supplies. I think once you get a family too, you start to
Money
be real.
is nice.
Yeah, money's good,
Mm-hmm.
and you get money in certain ways. In other ways, money's a little harder to come by. So he sold medical supplies, and that led to other sales opportunities, and that's how he got into entrepreneurship, I think.
Got it. I see. Now, all in the Provo, Utah area?
No. So we were in Michigan when he was selling medical supplies, and then we went to California.
Because of jobs? His jobs took him all these places?
He was a sales in California for a newspaper.
And at what age were you in this range?
I was around 5,
Young.
3, 4 in Michigan, 5, 6 in California. And he
it.
came here,
Eastern Idaho.
Boise.
He came to Boise. Okay.
Yeah, straight to Boise.
Gotcha.
And then he came just to continue his sales. I mean, what was his career progression there? Because
Yeah,
he
most of
ended
them
up-
doesn't go Michigan, California, Boise.
Yeah.
Like corporate. It's not normally the path.
California, Boise is a pretty common path.
That's common. That's true.
Yeah.
But not if you're going up in the corporate ladder.
I'll tell you, he and my mom, they were in Sacramento, South Sacramento, and like just tons of crime. And there was a hostage situation around the corner, and his parents were in Burley. One day they were traveling to Burley, and they stayed the night in Boise, and they watched the news. And for 30 minutes during the newscast, there was nothing about violence, nothing about somebody getting shot. And they just said, we're moving to Boise.
Yeah.
And that's all there was to it. And he didn't have a job or anything. So
He just quit.
he just quit. He came here and he started a real estate magazine.
Interesting. So,
Okay.
and you were what, 6, 7, you said?
Yeah, 6 or 7 years old.
Do you remember him feeling stressed? Like, that's got to be kind of stressful.
Mm-hmm.
You remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And I mean, but when I was between, 6 and 12, I remember there being a lot of stress because it was the real estate magazine worked for a few years and then it didn't. And there were a few other jobs in between there and businesses that he started that didn't go great. And then he decided he was selling for a newspaper press. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen a newspaper press. In the day of the internet, it's just not something you see anymore. But newspaper presses, they have these huge rolls of paper that they weave through this long press. And he was selling ads for, I think, just the different newspapers that this press would print. And he decided to buy the whole business when the boss decided to sell.
So it's a newspaper, and he was selling. And now, how was this like as a contractor, or how does that work when you're just selling ads essentially?
Yeah, he's selling ads. So I think they had the Mountain Home, the Air Force Base newspaper, and they had a bunch of ads, like the Idaho Statesman.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys grew up in this area, they used to have the paper, and then inside the paper there were ads for like grocery stores
Yep.
and things like that.
Yeah.
They would print all the ads in the middle of that.
Gotcha.
So they'd contract with the Statesman to do that work, and they'd contract with the Air Force Base to do the Air Force
Oh,
paper.
so it wasn't a newspaper. He didn't buy the newspaper. He just bought the thing that sold the ads
And made the ads.
and made the ads, printed them, right?
Yeah, they did have their own newspaper too. I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah.
Okay. So, and you're 12-ish when this happens?
I think I was about 12-ish, 10 or 12 when he bought the Graphic Arts Publishing is what it was called.
Interesting. Okay.
And where was this located? This was in Boise?
Yeah, so Warm Springs,
Okay.
the golf course over there?
Mm-hmm.
It was just right by the golf course. Just a nondescript building. It's still there.
So you said you remember stress during this time. Where did he get I'm assuming that means that, he's probably doing okay, but not like, it's not like he's not incredibly wealthy. Otherwise the stress probably goes less, right?
Yeah.
So how did he buy this? How did he buy it? Where'd that money come from?
He got a loan from the bank.
Okay. All right.
And then just bought it on payments. So he made payments, regular payments to the guys. It was a tough business to be in, because with something like that, you're paid. You've got to keep the press running almost 24/7 to make it worth your while to just eke out a profit. And if the press is down for a little while, or if you don't have enough work to keep it busy, then it's tough. It's tough. And even if it is, profits were maybe 4%, 5%. So,
and that's just because the equipment's very expensive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of involved in a press.
Yeah, and lots of labor involved. You have to have pressmen taking care of the press, and a lot of other people.
So did you work there?
Yeah. So from the time I was 14, actually, and I was thinking about this actually on the drive over, because being a lawyer today, I'm pretty sure, laws have changed, but it probably wasn't legal for me to work.
Because it was a press, or because you're young?
Because of my age. I think when you're between 14 and 16, especially in 16 to 18, probably, the government takes an interest in your safety.
Yeah.
and this was an environment where, I remember people losing fingers. And,
OSHA, you're saying here?
Yeah.
Now, because I know
exactly
kids
right.
can work at family businesses at young ages, but because of the environment, because you're saying it's kind of a dangerous, people losing fingers.
Yeah, I remember several people losing fingers, several pressmen.
You open up the paper and there's like a severed finger there.
I got the prize.
10% off.
Yeah, I don't think that ever happened, thankfully.
Oh, that sounds terrible, though.
But it was an interesting place to be growing up and working. I would work summers there, and I sure knew by the end of those summers that I didn't want to work manual labor. That was one thing. I'd be just covered in ink.
So this counted as manual labor? Is this where you're like a pressman is like manual labor? Is that where you're?
Yeah. So most of the time I was either on the inserter machine or I was on the press, just taking papers as they got off the press, and I'd stack them and tie them and stack them on pallets. So it was a lot of hard work.
So I was going to ask, fond memories or not so much? I mean, now maybe, but it sounds like you didn't love it.
Well, I didn't love it enough to want to make it my career.
Yeah, sure.
So when you're working at the printing press and you're thinking, I don't want to do this, did you have ideas of, like, hey, this is what I'm going to do instead? Or
sure, I was going to play in the NBA, and I was going to, I don't know. That's a good question. I didn't really understand what I wanted to be when I grew up until a lot later.
I'm curious how the graphic design moved your dad into phone books.
So that's actually a pretty good story. I told you the press has to be going almost all the time for it to work. And they got into a problem where they would weave that paper through the press, and it takes a long time to weave it. It takes a good, I don't know, if I remember right, it was half an hour to an hour to get it all the way through this press. And the paper kept snapping. And they didn't know why it was snapping. They called the press. They'd just gotten a new press, actually. They called the paper company. They tried all these different things. It ended up being the paper company, just a bad batch of paper. But during that time, that work is all about deadlines, right? You have to have those inserts done. You have to have those newspapers out on time. And if you don't, you lose customers. And they lost half of their customers in a space of 2 weeks. And so you talk about stress, like that's the most stressed I can remember seeing my dad. And all of a sudden they've lost half of their business and you know, it's not profitable anymore. And he had to figure out, how in the world do I make this work? And he thought, I'll try printing a phone book. And at the time, Boise had 2 phone books already. It was a weird time. It was the phone book industry.
I would love to learn more about the phone book industry because I honestly I have no idea how that works. Yeah, so go ahead.
Well, it was the wild, wild west of the phone book industry. It was proliferation back then. So new phone books were starting to pop up in different areas, and they were charging just phenomenal amounts, like US West Direct or who later became Dex, and Yellow Book were just charging tens of thousands of dollars for these ads.
Oh, for ads. Okay.
I was going to say, who are they charging? Because it's not the residents.
No, they drop off the books for free, but
right.
but they had tens of millions of dollars in the Boise phone book market. So my dad started printing these Boise books, and
because like I need to fill the printing press's time. Right.
Yeah.
That was kind of the thing. I need to do something here. May as well put something in there.
Fill the press's time. And he already had ad salespeople, so he could just repurpose those guys.
Mm-hmm. And so with the phone book, do you buy a directory of
How do you get all the numbers?
You start calling and adding a 1 to every.
Just go through.
So back putting my lawyer hat on again, the Supreme Court back in the late 80s or early 90s actually said that to keep US West and those companies from having a monopoly, AT&T, on the phone book business, they had to sell their numbers for a certain amount per number to.
How did they get their numbers though?
They got theirs because they're the phone company.
Okay, they were the phone company, right?
Oh,
so that's why they had the phone numbers. They're the ones that are, they know who has what, right?
That's right. So that changed over the years, and there were different ways to get those numbers.
But they had to sell them at some probably reasonable price.
That's exactly right.
And your dad was able to purchase that list.
Yep.
Just a big list, right? Essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now in the 80s, when was this? Let's see, was it 80s?
This was the 90s. So this was early 90s.
I'm trying to think about how you process that. Because Boise area, you're looking at 200. I mean, you think Treasure Valley, probably 300,000 people?
Yeah, back then.
Well, and
it was a little more even.
And the list didn't come in Excel.
That's what I'm saying.
It's like in a stack.
It's got to be a stack.
Yeah.
And you type it in, or you like.
Well, it came on it was probably on some kind of a drive or a disc or something.
Yeah, floppy disk or something.
Yeah. And there was a software to bring those over.
I mean, software is a strong word. Back then, like even creating ads, they didn't create ads on the computer, you know.
They didn't boot up like a Photoshop.
No, they had these light tables that just pushed light up, and I remember people literally putting together ads, like cutting out things. It was like a school project.
Yeah.
There was a lot of X-Acto.
Photo collage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
So you have the directory. He buys it all. That can be cheap, or maybe it is cheap because they're forced to sell these numbers.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't cheap.
And privacy laws, there's just so much. Like right now, it's hard to find someone's phone number, like their cell phone. And back then, it was like you could find anyone's phone number, right? You really could just like look it up, and you're like, okay.
And not just their phone number, but their address.
Their address too, right?
Yeah, and people wanted that information out there. Because
there's no other way to find them.
Yeah.
I have to think prank phone calls have declined drastically since the phone.
Right, because you had to find that number, and right now it was back then it was like
you could just do random. Hey, let's call this person.
Right,
and I think everybody appreciated that.
I think that's a good move.
That's true.
Well, I don't know. I think
as a kid,
I think
it was nice to be able to find anyone's number.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I wasn't trying to do business stuff with it. I was not marketing to people, but it was like, hey, I want to find this lady's number. And you could find it really easily right there.
And the thing is, that's the sad thing that's gone with the passing of the phone books and stuff. That's one of the sad things that's gone. Anyway.
Pranksters have a much harder time now.
That's right.
Yeah. So he got into it. He got into phone booking.
He got into it, and after about 30 seconds, he realized that he'd hit kind of a gold mine.
Really?
It was just the perfect situation because people were paying so much for these other ads. I mean, they paid $20,000, $15,000, well, probably 20 plus for an ad in the in
phone
the
book.
big phone
And this
book.
is a year's worth of ad, like
Yeah, it's a year's
one
worth
phone
of
book per
one
year,
right? Okay.
Yep. And
So he just undercut?
he
He's like,
could
okay.
come in and go half the price with a product that was, he went full color where they were black and white. And he would distribute to all the same, homes. It took a long time, obviously, for people to start using our phone book versus the other ones. But it did happen. I mean, he put a really nice picture on the cover,
I
full
remember.
color. And just those little things made a huge difference. And, immediately the book met its goals and more even the first year. I think
Now, how do they measure like return on these? I don't like these paper ads. That's hard to measure return.
Yeah.
The ad companies are just like, sure, another phone book. It's less expensive. I have a marketing budget. Let's go.
Sure. And we sold this company about 5 years ago, but I still advertise in the phone book as an attorney.
Really?
I do my own advertising and I still advertise. The best way to measure is like, I can't remember what it's called with Google, but Google has their own
Conversion.
Google Voice or Google,
Oh, okay.
what do you call that number?
Google Voice is the phone number.
It's
that
a
you can-
dummy number that
Yeah.
you can buy.
Right. I have a Google Voice number. Yeah.
And then I don't know on Google Voice, can you get all the stats? Can you
Yeah.
see
They tell
who
because they send
called
me an
and when?
email every like, oh, this is how many people use this number to call. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the phone book industry has been doing that for a long time. I think we started doing it.
So they have specific phone numbers that they put in the ad, and then they can track to say, okay, this is how many phone calls I get to this number.
That's exactly right. So way before Google was doing it, we were doing it with customers back in the early 2000s, I think.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so did you, I feel like Impact, I barely remember those. The other phone books were bigger. I remember they're like the full size ones, and I remember them being paper. But eventually, I don't remember those at all. I do remember the Impact Directories being like, that was like all we had around the house.
Sweet.
I mean, really,
Jordan was a loyal customer.
I was a loyal customer, a loyal reader.
Throw out these yellow.
Well, you don't
pages.
want like a garbage yellow book there. You got like
Gross,
a,
right.
hot air balloon with the mountains in the back.
That was
and
common.
Impact.
That's right.
For
Impact.
Boise State later.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Boise State. Yeah, so did those other ones go away? It seems like they went away sooner.
So they did. They started printing fewer and fewer directories. They
Just because, was it this area or in general across the whole United States, they were kind of slowing
in
down?
general across the whole United States, but we were a very strong competitor. So I think they played the game. It's interesting. You're all in business. There's two ways to make money, and you've got to be interested in how much money you're spending and in how much money you're making. Both are super important. So we were always much more interested in how much money we were making. And we said the expenses, we don't cut corners on expenses.
As in, we're going to make this nice.
We're going to make it a
color.
nice book. We're going to print enough that it gets into every household, and we're going to do those things. They started looking at it from a scarcity model, and our competitors did, and started printing way fewer books every year and cutting out, like making the print smaller and smaller, which if you think about it is just the stupidest thing in the world, because demographic wise, who's using the phone book? It's the older people who've grown up.
They can't see it, so they're like,
with that habit. And so that's how we took market share. People could actually read our book. They actually got it on their doorsteps. And so that's why you saw less and less of the other books.
So do you think it helped? I mean, when these companies, let's say I'm at you, like for example, you advertise in the phone book. If you have, do you have different phone numbers in every? If you're in multiple books, like how you A/B testing this with like, I'm going to use this phone number over here, this phone number over here.
Yeah, if I was, I totally would. Yeah,
Because then you can track. Okay, well, I'm not getting very much from the yellow pages.
Yeah, in the height of our success, I guess, or not necessarily success, we had 20 phone books in 4 different states, and
That's what I was going to ask. I thought you were just Treasure Valley. You were multiple states. You expanded.
yeah, we were in Washington and Colorado and Wisconsin, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
And how do you get the phone books out to people? How do you distribute them?
Wait,
I know this.
I
Me
can
too.
answer that.
I want to know this.
You go.
Okay, I was looking on Craigslist
Oh,
randomly, and they were like, "Hey, make money just by passing out." Because I've always seen people passing out phone books. So I'm like, I want to do that. So I showed up at this like distribution.
You went and did this.
I did it because I had a Toyota Tacoma and it was in college, and they loaded it up with a pallet. And they gave me a little map, and they're like, where do you want? And I'm like, I want to do all the apartments at BSU. So they gave me this map. They're like, you got to do all of these, whatever, come back when you run out. And so me and a buddy went and just like, we're throwing them on everybody's door and blah, blah, blah. And it was really interesting.
Yeah, and my aunt was doing.
And they paid you, it was like a couple cents per, I forget the amount, a quarter or something per.
Yeah, a quarter per book.
Yeah.
And they just trust you that you got them to the right
Yes.
places.
Yes.
You didn't just dump them off somewhere.
Some people
Not
did.
exactly. We had to. There are some interesting stories about that.
Because I'm sure that, because I remember my aunt talking about it, and she said some people would just dump them. So I'm really curious to see how you handled that.
We had people who would go and spot check.
Yeah.
So every 5 houses or 10 houses.
You have to. Otherwise, you're just like, oh, okay, this neighborhood clearly has not. So did you wait till after the spot check to pay? Or how did you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a pretty good system. Was that both with Impact that you?
I did that with Impact.
I'm sure it was impacted.
I think we were the only ones that actually
Better
involved
safe.
the community.
Right.
Yeah.
But we had school groups coming in and doing it, and
Yeah.
they could make a ton of money off of that.
Really? Yeah, seriously. And it's
can.
not like it's
Yeah.
difficult. It's simple, I should say. It's not easy,
Yeah.
right? But it's simple work.
Oh man, it's hard work. The very first phone book was just a Meridian book, which later we made the Boise book. But when I think I just graduated from high school, me and 2 friends distributed the whole book, because back then Meridian
my
was
God.
not that big.
Not easy. Yeah, that's not.
Yeah.
Did you make a lot of money? Though? Were
Wow.
you paid? This is a.
Well, we didn't get paid by we might have gotten paid by the book, but we were all in good shape, best shape of my life. We're
Yeah.
running from house to house, and
Because the more books you deliver that day, the more money you get.
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
and for a solid month and a half, 2 months, we were delivering these books, just the 3 of us. So Meridian's quite a bit bigger now.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
it
yeah.
is.
Yeah, that's an interesting process on how they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the business of it, and I want to keep going there because it's really interesting. But I also want to tie you back to you. You're here, you're working there, and you said, 14, 15, your dad switched over to phone. Did he drop the rest? Like ads for newspapers? He's like, I'm done.
Yeah, he held on to that business for maybe another 2 years and then sold it because, like I said, it was the phone book. The model is a model where you can make a lot of money, because once the phone book's paid for, every page that you get in of advertising is just profit practically.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly, you got to pay for each page, but you've still got to distribute it. You've still got to print the whole thing, and you've still got to.
You have a fixed cost that's there,
Yeah.
and the variable for the ad is really not that much.
Yeah, man, if you can find a business where once you hit profitability, everything on top of that is.
Yeah, the leverage of it is just gigantic.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. So because of that, it was a real hard business to let go of.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And then, so did you print it once a year? So your printers weren't going 24/7, 7 days a week,
That's
right? I
interesting.
mean,
yeah.
they were just going for a few months.
Yeah, and I think he printed that first book. I think the first book was actually Canyon County, now that I think about it. But you print it once a year, and he only printed 1 book, if that. I think he decided, this is a great business, and I don't even have to print it. I'm just going to go put all my eggs in this basket.
So somebody else would print it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So he sold the press, and that's when you said he sold that. Now I'm curious from a legal standpoint. Were they, because he didn't start them as separate entities? Did he just separate one off into a separate entity, or just
Yeah. Yep. Actually, I think he used a previous company that he'd set up that ended up not doing anything. It was called Arrow Rock International Inc.,
Okay.
which sounds like an international company.
conglomerate? Yeah,
Like our
Conglomerate.
podcast.
like our
Yeah, right.
The
international.
thing about Arrow Rock is, in the phone book days, you always wanted to have an A at the start of your name.
That's right.
That's a good point.
Or at symbol.
Triple A.
I don't know if that exists.
Triple
Yeah,
A,
exactly.
A plus, A1.
Actually,
Acme.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because nobody's going to look in the second or third page of the Google listing. You just first page.
I like how you call it Google listing.
I know, like first page of the
Google
Yeah.
listing.
first page of the phone book. If you're not in there,
Yeah, made a big difference. There was actually some problems there with people calling themselves AA,
Yeah.
That's right. Uh-huh.
AA Advanced.
You were
Yeah.
A1 Mosquito, right?
I was A1 Mosquito,
Yeah.
and that's why. even though I was never listed in the phone book.
Huh.
Anyway. Yeah, Arrow Rock.
So,
Arrow Rock International.
Arrow Rock International, he just kind of said, okay, well, we're going to say this owns all the assets of it. Take it.
Yeah. So it was originally an importing business. He would import stuff from Taiwan and sell it wholesale to somebody. I don't know. Didn't work.
So you did this through high school. You didn't say, I mean, you went to college right after. I mean, what happened? How did your involvement continue? Because clearly you worked with it for a while. You mentioned things in the 2000s.
You bet. So when I wasn't working on the press or distributing books, I was an appointment setter. I would cold call businesses and try to set up appointments for salespeople. So this was another thing that we did that the competition wasn't doing. They threw their salespeople out there and said, you go set all your appointments and do all your paperwork and stuff. And so my dad had the idea that he could get salespeople to be interested in our company if we had appointment setters that would call
Business development rep, right?
Yeah.
Or SDR, one of those. Yeah.
kind of a secretary to do all your paperwork and also to do all the hardest work to set up those appointments.
These are outside sales reps, right? They're going over to the business.
Right.
They'll come over and talk to them about the ad they'd want to buy.
Right. And I'm not that person naturally. So that was the hardest job ever. I don't know if you've ever done that, but just sitting on the phone and going through the phone book and calling one after another and trying to convince them to meet with a sales rep. That was I grew a lot.
Yeah, that's good training.
It's good training.
That's good training for sure. You got to get past gatekeepers. Get past a bunch of stuff.
You had to do that,
I've
right,
done
Brandon?
that.
Phone book.
That's right. You did the phone. Yeah, I can't remember. I remember with the legal.
I went down so 6 months I just did straight cold calling all day long
Yeah.
and didn't get a single sale. So anyway.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, another story. But yeah, I've been there. That's not easy.
No.
But that's a good idea for your dad. I mean, he grew up doing sales.
Yeah.
So he probably knew the value of appointment setting.
That's right.
That was pretty smart on his idea.
So it worked it seems like a lot of previous experience that your dad had worked out well.
Yeah, it really did. It really did. And it was successful just right off the bat and kept getting more successful, and they kept opening books. And for a long time, it was just the trajectory was just up. So
Yeah.
See, it's interesting. I was listening to a book the other day, and they were talking about entrepreneurs, and they're like, so they're looking for entrepreneurs that have failed a bunch.
Isn't that most? Like most entrepreneurs, that's the thing. You don't see them though. You don't see
Well,
the failure.
like venture capitalists or I don't know, investment people, when they're hearing a pitch from an entrepreneur, they're like, well, what have you failed at?
Right.
You know, and so for your dad's history, he's like done stuff over and over and over and learned enough to where, you know, when it hit, like this Impact Directory thing, he knew what to do with it. He knew how to grow it. He knew.
Isn't that the phrase, the 10-year overnight success?
Oh, I
Because
never heard that.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, he's been working on different stuff for 10
Yeah.
years, right? All these different things. But then he's like, well, he hit it easy once he got phone books, but there's so much experience he had built up.
Oh, yeah.
And he learned all these different things of how to do
Absolutely.
this. That finally, when it hit, it wasn't just because luck, right? It's almost like your surface area.
Yeah.
Because he probably doesn't do the phone book thing if he doesn't do the ad printing before that, right?
Exactly.
no way.
One thing exposes an opportunity to another.
Yep.
And aspiring entrepreneurs, they're listening. That's what they should think about.
Yeah.
Sometimes just doing stuff helps you see other stuff,
Exactly.
opportunities that are out there. And yeah,
Did you always want to go work with your dad?
yeah, that's curious. Yeah, even this.
So honestly, never. I would, you know, when you're a kid, especially, I think you're doing this work and you're thinking, this is the worst thing ever. I want to work for something exciting.
Yeah.
Can't wait to get out.
I want to do something that I can tell people that I'm doing it and they'd be like, oh, that is so cool.
Wait a
And I
minute.
never got that reaction with the phone book.
Okay.
See, phone books are cool.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
So
the money,
obviously an attorney. I mean, obvious choice.
No,
No.
but it's one of if you think of prestigious careers,
Yeah.
name like there's like two that are like the main ones. What are they?
Doctor?
phone book. Lawyer.
You know, Seth,
Doctor and lawyer, right?
but-
Those are like
Doctors
the
and
two.
lawyers.
but Seth went, interesting story. Seth went to William and Mary College for law school.
Yeah.
Oldest college in the United States.
Really?
Yeah. It's actually a really cool William and Mary, obviously the English.
British monarchs.
Yes, at the time in Virginia, near Williamsburg, Virginia. It's like one of the prettiest
Cool looking school.
universities. Yeah. When I drove by,
1800s. It's got to be 1800s. When was it founded?
oh, 17.
16.
Yeah.
16?
Yeah, long time
It
ago.
was 1680, 1690 something.
Yeah, what pushed you toward law?
You sound disappointed, Jordan. You're like, what made you do that?
Why
would you do that?
This is kind of hilarious because my dad's a serial entrepreneur. My mom is an artist. She's an oil painter. So she would paint stuff and sell it in galleries downtown.
Oh.
And for a brief period of time in college, I was an animation major. I was trying to be an animation major.
So you have some art.
Yeah, my parents were like, that is so cool. Way to go. That was super exciting. When a year later I said, actually, I'm going to go to law school, they were like, that is the worst decision ever.
That's funny because I would think a lot of parents would be like, art sounds like a good hobby.
Yeah.
Lawyer that's a good solid career. But your parents were like the opposite.
Yeah. So that's just where they come from, I guess. My dad's thinking about being an entrepreneur and my mom's thinking about being an artist, and attorney is very
Like the opposite
much
of all of those.
neither of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was in the middle of law school, and so I should say this up front. I love being an attorney now. I don't know what I was thinking, but I had kind of a quarter life crisis in the middle of law school, and law school, if you talk to any attorney, is pretty brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talk to the attorneys who right out of law school go and work for a firm and kind of sell their soul to the firm and work 80-hour weeks and
To become partner. And,
never see their families and stuff. And so I started to wonder, do I want to go that route? And meanwhile, this company's growing back home like crazy. And Dad says, hey, I could really use you in the family business. And I had 3 kids by the time I graduated from law school too. So again, you start to think about paying the bills and
What year is this?
it's 2000,
Could be
2006.
2006.
Okay.
Yeah, 2006. So I came home and worked for the family.
Finished law school?
I did finish law
Okay,
school.
you
I
finished
passed
it.
the bar. So I was technically vice president and general counsel when I came back.
I see.
Oh,
But it was,
yeah.
family business. It was nepotism.
Yeah. Idaho bar, obviously, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, but your general counsel, you had a law degree at least, so it's not like you're
Yeah.
not
and
pure nepotism there.
it came in handy. We were always negotiating big. I mean, these deals would be in the hundreds of thousands with vendors and real estate. We got into real estate and set up other companies. We probably set up 5 other companies while I was there. And so it did come in handy. And we, like any company, we had employment issues and we had issues with our competition. So I think at the height of our business, we had 85 employees. So there were about, 10% of my job was still legal work.
Oh, I believe that. My company's not anywhere that size, and I still think, it's really nice to have a lawyer
Yeah.
you can
Oh,
trust to talk
absolutely.
to, the contract review, any of that stuff. It's
Actually, business owners are kind of a different mindset, though, that the attorney kind of slows them down sometimes too. So
yeah,
Sure.
So having an in-house counsel to say, I don't know about that idea. I think I helped, but
Yeah.
maybe some friction there.
Yeah.
I felt like I was slowing things down.
No, but you have some.
sometimes.
I mean, as a business owner, if your lawyer says, "Yeah, this is good," you feel some confidence, right? Before
Yes.
that, I have had, I make decisions. Sometimes I'm like, I hope, I don't
Should
like
be
that.
fine.
Yeah, it should be fine.
It'll work out.
That's
There's a funny story with attorneys and Impact Directories. Do you mind if I bring it up?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it was in the 2006 timeframe, because I just remember getting the Impact Directories book, and then on the the hard
no.
stem. You guys don't remember this.
This sounds vaguely familiar. Go ahead.
Anyway, there was I think accident attorneys advertise pretty heavily with phone books.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway,
Like injury lawyers.
injury attorneys, yeah. And so anyway, there was a big ad, and I think it was on the stem. What do you call that? The hard part,
The back.
The
Yeah.
spine?
yeah, the spine
There
of
you go. That's what you're looking for.
the. Anyway, somehow I was looking at it, and it's like want a lawyer, or need a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
and it looked off, and I was like, what is? And then it was a sticker, and I peeled the sticker off of lawyer, and it said lawer.
Yeah.
No, why?
Okay.
And I was like, oh no, they had a sticker over the lawyer part. And I was like, oh no, how many books did they have to?
Yeah, 200,000 books.
You remember this?
I do. These are the kind of lessons that make you double and triple and quadruple check your work after. And we did check it. We had so many different levels to check and make sure that things weren't spelled wrong. For instance, proofers, and we would send it to the client to proof themselves, and so they missed it as well. But our fix was to order these stickers. We called our printer ASAP, and we said, hey, we need something with the same gloss that no one except Brandon will ever find.
And that's the thing. It was
you didn't even
it
notice.
had been rubbed
It just
off
felt
a little bit
weird.
Yeah.
So we paid about 20 kids. This is in the middle of the summer, to sit in our warehouse and just
Apply stickers.
book after book to apply these stickers where they should.
So you
be.
were already working there at this time.
Yeah, I was. It was an expensive lesson.
Yeah, I was going to say that must have been painful.
But at the same time, we could have just put the book out and had it be wrong and said, here, we'll just give you your money back. That's what the contract says.
Yeah.
But we didn't do that. You don't.
We told the customer probably, we're going to have to put these stickers on there.
Yeah, we told the customer. It was an interesting meeting. We sat across the customer and said, hey, we've got an issue. I want you to look at your ad, and what do you see? And for a good
Didn't see it.
couple minutes, both these attorneys sat there and they looked at it and
It's great.
I don't see anything.
Isn't that crazy? Sometimes your mind just corrects
Your mind
it.
just
corrects
finishes it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we pointed it out to them and then showed them a book with the sticker on it, and they were actually super impressed. They said, oh, man, I can't believe we missed that. But they continued to be advertisers for years after that. And I think about all the business we would have lost from other people.
Yeah.
I mean, that was from attorneys, especially. We had tons of revenue from attorneys, and that could have been a total disaster. As it was, we spent probably $20,000 fixing the issue, and it was fixed.
Now, this is interesting to me because you had the option to just send the book out or come back and tell the customer. And that's always like, oh, maybe they won't notice, right? You always have that thought, like, I made this mistake, maybe they won't notice. You guys chose to not only come and tell them, but you presented a solution. And you said they kept advertising with you. Now, how come you don't think they lost confidence?
I think it's just when you're willing to go the extra mile to fix a mistake, and when you own up to your own mistake, I think that's key.
It's I feel that a lot. A lot of, how many times, and a lot of times you feel really crummy and like scared when you make a mistake, but it just feels so much better just telling them,
get it out
get
there.
it open and say, hey, this is what we're going to do to fix it. We messed up.
Right.
People respect that so much.
They gave you the ad, right? I mean, or how did
They
you
proof
came
it.
up with
They
it?
In this case, we made the ad in-house.
Oh, okay.
But we did proof it to them. We
Okay.
did say, hey, look this over
You
and
both
make sure
looked at it.
everything's totally correct.
Because at that point, you could have said, look, we both looked at it. We didn't catch it.
This
It
is going to
what
cost
it
you
is.
$20,000 extra.
Oh, yeah.
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 But
No, not the way to do things.
no,
Yeah.
it's not the way to do things.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So you come into the business, tell us about that career arc, because it was, 15 years that you were in it, right?
Yeah.
Or 14, 15, 16 years. I mean, what was that experience?
Especially since it's like there's the internet coming in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you had a lot of things combining at the same time. So for the first, when was the Great Recession? Was that
2008.
2008?
Yeah.
So I started working there 2006 again. And for the next couple of years, we had growth, and we were doing some good things and good work, and the salespeople were super happy and selling like crazy. And then the Great Recession hit. And that was about the same time that Google started really coming online, and people started migrating from the phone books to Google. And so you had all of that pressure at the same time. It was just a really interesting time to be in any company, but the phone book was a particularly difficult company to be in at that time, I think.
Were you looking at it and thinking, there may be a horizon or were you guys like, we can innovate, we can continue to change, or what was your guys' plan at the time? Because even in addition to that, there were cell phones coming in.
Yeah.
You know, and people were moving away from home phones. That was a traditional directory listing, I guess.
That's right. When was the iPhone? That was
around that time, 8, 9.
I remember I had one in 2007.
Wow. So, yeah, it was a lot of thinking forward. It was a lot of going through different scenarios in your mind. We saw a lot of companies in the industry go all digital and like put all of their eggs in that basket. And the problem is you don't try to compete with Google. That's just not a good business model.
You're saying they like would try to be a directory, like it would be like Impact Online, whatever. Something.
Yeah.
I remember Dex did that. And they advertised quite a bit on TV. I just remember seeing that where you could go onto Dex and just look up a
business, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we did the same thing. I mean, we had an online component even back then. But to put all of your eggs in that basket, to try to,
I don't think have both.
We never sold ads online for our online directory at that point.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't see the value in it. So a lot of other companies, they were selling online ads. And, you know, these things that no one would ever, that very few people would ever go to. The whole thing is eyeballs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the more eyeballs you have on it, the more it's worth. And the print product, you know, we could tell from those call tracking phone numbers that it was still giving just a phenomenal return on investment. So we were slow to make that transition. And I think it was a good thing in the industry overall, in the country and in the world. While other people were making that change very quickly, they would go out of business pretty fast. And we didn't. We
think it was just fear? They were just acting on fear then?
Yeah, it's a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and it's logical. I mean, everybody knew that eventually Google would take over the whole market, but we saw a long tail there, and that's what kept us in business. And the difficult part of it was more psychological, that we had to deal with every year losing a little bit more revenue. And I think we had maybe 2 of the next years that I worked there over the next 13, 2 or 3, where we increased our revenue overall for the books that we had. We did some other things to build economies of scale. We acquired another company or started taking over work for another company in Colorado. And later on, we started books in Wisconsin. We went out to Wisconsin or we were scouting these different markets and went out to Wisconsin, and there were video stores on every corner. And we were like, this is the kind of market that could use it.
There's not a lot of internet, right?
Yeah.
No, people aren't. Maybe
video,
slow internet or whatever.
Video rentals. That's hilarious.
Yeah. It was interesting. We started 3 books out there during that time and had a lot of success with those.
Are you printing them locally? You have to print. You're not printing them here and then shipping them, or
we printed them mostly out of Liberty Press in Utah.
Okay. So you would ship them then?
Yeah, we'd ship them.
Hmm.
To these different markets. But it was a different time. You know, it's psychologically, it's a hard thing to do to see numbers going down every year.
Yeah, certainly.
But still, you know, see profits.
Profit is still great.
Profits were phenomenal, and then less phenomenal until they were just great, and then less great until they were just good, and we sold the company.
Yeah.
But that was also interesting at that time because there was an offer to buy the company right before the Great Recession hit. That was just a crazy offer. It was crazy high thinking back at it. And when the recession hit, that offer went away. And
were you considering the offer?
Yeah, I think we were considering it.
Did you have equity at this point?
I might have had a little. I'm trying to remember when I got equity. I don't think so. I think I got equity a little later.
Okay, so I like to ask, when people say offer, you know, everyone wants to know how much it was. And you don't have to tell us, but I like to put it in terms of like, is it an offer like where your dad is never going to work ever again and possibly his grandchildren would not have to work ever again? Like, this is, how many generations of good is it?
Well, that's not the way our family works, unfortunately.
Which I can respect.
Yeah, no, I love that
but could.
too.
Yeah.
I love that too. Yeah, my dad would never have had to work again.
Okay.
Easy. And you know, it was tough. We still made plenty of money. I think it was still great holding on to the books, but that was a big offer. And when that went away, all of a sudden the market for phone books completely went away. No one was buying phone books. And that was always kind of in our back pocket, that we'll do this as long as we're having fun. And when we get a great offer, we'll pass that off.
So did you decline it, or were you like in the process of thinking about it and then it went away?
In the process of thinking about it.
Okay, so it wasn't like you didn't want it and then it went away. It was like,
Yeah.
maybe, and then it went away anyway.
Yeah, there were bidding wars. I mean, it was a time when everybody wanted to get in on that business.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you think he regretted, especially in 2009, revenue's going down, 2010? Do you think he's like, oh man, I kind of wish we would have moved a little quicker on that?
I don't know. That's a good question, because he always loved that business more than I think us younger folks who could kind of see the tech
Yeah.
creeping in.
He probably liked that. I mean, you worked there. Did you have other siblings working there?
Yeah. So my brother did all of our technology. He was our chief technology officer, and my brother-in-law was there. He was a vice president with me. Then we had another brother-in-law come in, and he was our CFO. And so we'd have other family members come in. Like, I'd employ my kids there to do to deliver phone books and do some of the manual labor stuff. And so the family was very much involved in this business.
As a father and a grandfather, I can think that would be big reasons for me not to want to sell.
Yeah.
To think like, man, I am helping support, like my family, the grandkids are getting a chance to make some good money while learning good work skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. But it was tough. I think he enjoyed it a lot more than we did, just because
He's the main, I mean, he started it from the beginning. There's some pride there, some ownership.
there's some pride there. And you get a little tired of it when you go and meet somebody new and say, hey, what do you do for a living? And say, I'm in the phone book business.
And they're like,
They say, the first thing out of their mouth was always, oh, that's got to be doing terrible. Or
right.
Or,
It's a tough market right now.
yeah, it's like
Get jaded a little bit.
first thing that happens when you meet somebody is they throw out an insult about what you do for a living. That's like,
God, I thought you were going to say the typewriter business.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
No, it was a tough time for sure.
Yeah.
But
I appreciate you saying that, because I feel like a lot of people would, that's being honest. You know, that wasn't the fact that the business is doing fine. You're getting paid probably fine and you're supporting your family well. But, that's like a real thing in business, right? Where you feel like kind of crummy just about what you're doing.
yeah, and I don't think that you asked before what I wanted to do when I grew up, and you always want to do something exciting, and interesting. I think I found in the phone book business it was interesting because we had a wide variety of clients. And so you'd meet people in all different industries, and you'd meet people who had their own businesses, small businesses, and were doing very, very well and making a ton of money. And one thing that I noticed is the people who were in the businesses that don't have a lot of glory, like
there's a lot of
septic
unsexy businesses. There's a lot of money.
Yeah, there's a lot of money in those businesses. I think just maybe it's that fewer people want to compete in those.
Mm-hmm.
Fewer people go into that in the first place, or it's just tough to get started. But you make a ton of money in businesses that aren't as interesting.
Right. Yeah.
So then maybe describe kind of the winding down of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And that decision to sell. Yeah.
So, my dad left the company. He went and he and my mom went and did some missionary service for 3 years. And during that time, my brother-in-law and I were essentially the co-presidents of the company.
So he left, still had the equity though.
He still
Majority owner probably.
He was still majority owner. We all had equity at that point.
Was he selling? Was any intention to sell, or is it just like, no, I'll just take dividends as they come?
He just was going to take dividends. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we started running the numbers going forward. You start to say, how long can this trajectory last? We were diversifying like crazy at that point. We had a real estate company where we had all of these residential and commercial properties. that we would take the profits from the phone book company and put them in there, and that was going great.
Like related to the phone, or just like not related really at all? Just like you purely
separate entities, right? It wasn't under
maybe a subsidiary or something.
Yeah, not even a subsidiary, just a completely separate company.
Gotcha. So it was like, then you were like, oh, that was like your dad was involved in that as well?
Yeah, he was. In fact, he was the full owner of that. So he would take all his profits and put it into that other business.
So the entrepreneur side and him being like, okay.
Yeah.
And then we would run it. He had a contract with us to run that company, and that was just making money, and you didn't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
Like practically, we did have the SWAT team come into a home once. And
Oh my, that's a fascinating story. I remember you telling the story. It's so fascinating.
Oh, go on.
It is such a funny story.
All right, so
So because you had
Brandon's
residential
getting all
properties
the
with
best.
rentals and yeah.
yeah, so for the most part, you could just set it and forget it with that company. You just property management company would take care of the whole thing, and once you bought it, you didn't have to do a thing. But once the SWAT team got a tip that an escaped felon or something was in one of our rental homes. We rented it to his girlfriend apparently, and her background check was completely clean, but they had a tip that this guy was in there. And so the whole SWAT team in Nampa or Caldwell, I can't remember, they went out around the house, and for probably 6 hours, they're just outside with the bullhorn just saying,
Come out with
your hands up. We'll negotiate with you and all these things. And then when that never happened, they went in with tear gas, and they were like
breaking windows, doors,
making holes in the ceiling.
Yeah.
All these things they did. It was just an astronomical amount of damage. I want to say it was $80,000 worth of damage in the home, half of the home's value at the time, probably. And the guy wasn't even in.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Wasn't there? Now, so the girlfriend, no one was there. House is empty.
No one was in there. And to make matters worse, the government, we're like, so your insurance is going to pay for this, right? They said, actually, the way the law is set up, your insurance pays for it if it covers it.
Yeah. They're like, see ya. We're going to shoot tear gas through the windows and
Bust
enjoy
the ceiling.
that
like
claim.
Windows.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. That's kind of.
I know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office. In fact, during law school, I was actually going to be a prosecutor. And so I can appreciate that sometimes that's a very hard job. So,
Yeah.
So I appreciate all the decisions that go into that. But as being on the other side, that was a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. Oh, $80,000. That's like.
I just think, what if they would have gotten the wrong house?
They did get the wrong house.
Well,
Yeah, wasn't the story that wasn't he? I thought the story
But
was
he
that.
could have been at that house. He just wasn't there, right?
So it's like
I'm just
if
saying,
he's
like,
there,
if they're at the
you're
Target
liable.
house and they went to the neighbor's house,
Oh,
they're
that
like,
would be bad,
Sorry,
yeah.
we broke your house.
Yeah.
Does that mean I could like call in? I mean, obviously it's a risk, right? But like, I don't like Brandon. He pissed me off. So I'm pretty sure there's a felon in Brandon's house, and they're just like $80,000.
Go to the America's Top Most Wanted people and just pick one.
This I know this guy's here.
This is the new age of pranking. It's not the phone book.
Next
The
level.
SWAT team.
$80,000 bill.
I remember you telling me that story because it happened. And you're like, yeah, the SWAT team just destroyed our house, just like ripped through our house, and then just kind of walked away like, oh, darn it.
Sorry about that.
Darn it.
So,
So it's like,
hey,
and
Oh,
like,
shucks.
you got to think about it, like in the Avengers movies, right? All the destruction that's caused. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, that's so much money. But no, the Avengers don't pay for that.
No.
No,
That's
it's
true.
It's the insurance.
Yeah.
They're
They
not
ought to
right.
have a new Avengers episode with the attorney.
people would watch
Avengers.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
With the apostrophe after the S.
All the battles that are taken in the courtroom with Hulk smashing.
That's right.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, so you guys were diversifying. That's a smart idea.
And we were also selling digital products at that point, not ads in our online phone book, but we were selling websites. We sold a lot of websites, and we sold some search engine optimization.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Why? That's how did you get into that? Just because
Because it's similar to
it's advertising.
phone book. It's advertising, yeah.
That's right.
But the way it's different is that economies of scale and that concept I was talking to you about, where once you pay for the book, everything else is gravy.
Mm-hmm.
With that, every new sale
It's a
had its
custom
own
design.
cost.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, it was nice. You could charge a monthly fee for
Hosting.
And my brother went into that business after we sold Impact. He sold
The
websites.
CTO is what you're saying, right?
Some other things, and he did very well at it.
Yeah, I remember talking to him about that at one point. Yeah, because he had a good amount of experience in building those types of sites and optimizing them.
But I think we were kind of spoiled with the phone book business. There was just a lot of.
You see margins on one thing, like 70% margin. That's kind of. Do we want to go to that business?
That's right. Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so then
Yeah,
did you
go
guys
winding down.
Did you guys come to a year where you said, okay, we need to?
Yeah, we just looked. We looked forward and saw the numbers going down and down, and that just wasn't sustainable. Even with our digital revenue rising every year, we weren't going to have a company. We had all of these employees who we loved, and it just didn't seem fair to them to. It's like I don't know if you've heard of the story of cutting a dog's tail. This is a terrible story.
Okay,
but
I'd love to hear it.
I kept thinking about this. If you have to cut a dog's tail off, you cut it off at the base. You don't cut it off piece by piece by piece.
That sounds so painful.
So we just looked.
I hope I never have to cut a dog's tail.
Yeah, don't cut a dog's tail off. As an attorney, I wouldn't advise you to.
Yeah.
And it just sounded painful that we were looking at, okay, we lay off this many people this year, we lay off this many people this year. Meanwhile, everybody who's left has more work to do because the book still has to go out.
That's the problem with that fixed cost, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think the thing that, I think one of the things that really did it is I told you about my quarter life crisis. I kind of had a midlife crisis, and I was like, I'm ready to try new things. I'm ready to do something different. And I told that to my dad, and just said, I'm going to start working part-time while I figure out what to do with the next chapter of my life. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he's like, we're selling the business. And it turned out to be just amazing timing because we sold the business in May of 2019.
Oh, right before pandemic hit. Yeah.
And you can imagine what would have happened. The company that we sold it to, they're out of Kansas City, and they do a great job, and the phone book's still coming out now, and they weathered that storm. But they also have, hundreds of books in markets across the country, and they're acquiring more in Canada, I think. And so they, economies of scale wise, they could handle it. They could handle it. It would have been tough for us. We would have lost a lot of revenue. We would have had to lay off a bunch of people, and not having workers come in for that period of time. My hat's off to all of you who went through that period of time.
Yeah.
And then the labor shortage afterwards. Yeah. It's just a hard place to be in that.
Not only that, the cost of living went up in our area.
Yeah.
So the cost of labor went up, labor short. There's a lot of.
So that means all those employees probably got laid off, though, when you sold the company.
They did, but we were able to give them a severance package.
Because with the sale, you were able to,
And the way that we felt about it, we did have some employees who were upset about it.
Which is inevitable.
But I think most of them realized that this couldn't last forever, and that it was time to get into a different business. And we followed all of our employees pretty closely. We helped them to find new jobs in some cases, and everybody, I think just about everybody landed very well in what I saw as a better business for them and better going forward.
So do you think your decision, it sounds like your dad probably already knew what was going on, and maybe you were like the straw that was like, okay, if he's out, maybe I'm out too. Let's sell. Who knows?
Maybe. I don't think it was because of me. I think.
Yeah, I'm sure your dad would be considered. It's more like you're the tipping point, maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Because how can you? Yeah, he knew what was coming. Yeah. Now he's already kind of retired. He was already kind of going on missions, taking dividend, not fully in the business anymore.
Right.
now that sale number, 2008 compared to then, I'm curious, were they similar? Because inflation, whatever, or is it? I got to think it was less.
It was about a fourth.
A fourth, yeah.
Yeah. And we were a bigger company. So, but it was still great. I mean, we still came out of it in very good shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think everything worked out about the best way it could have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then you went on to a new career. I'm assuming, did you go straight into joining McFarland Ritter?
It took some time, you said.
Yeah.
A week or two.
I didn't take a lot of time. I took a look at, it's scary to have everything out in front of you and to have if you have 2 or 3 options, that's great. But when all of a sudden you have a million options.
I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do. That's what you'd say.
Yeah.
Which means I'll just.
It's like coming out of college again. You're like, where do I go?
Yeah. So no, I had all sorts of different things. I thought about being a seminary teacher because I had money at that point. I didn't need extra money. So I tried that, and that was way harder than anything else. I think it was
You did try.
That surprised you? Like, that surprised you that it was really, I mean, if you've been through seminary, you see those teachers.
I actually remember talking to you about that decision, and you're like, I think I'm just going to do kind of a 180.
Yeah.
And just do more kind of the church type.
That's a lot of work,
job.
though.
That was the equivalent of deciding to be a monk and go walk around the mountains.
Because it's not like you can pick jobs that are like, I want to take it easy a little bit, And your hours probably went up.
Oh,
like a lot.
Astronomically. Yeah.
Right.
I would get up at 5 in the morning and have to be to the building.
So you did do that then for a year?
For a semester.
Oh, for a semester.
So I just had
quickly.
a couple classes, and I kept working at Impact during that time, but you had to prepare every day a new lesson plan, and you had to find a way to wake up 30 kids in a class, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was
Isn't it crazy that it's
hard.
a calling? And some place, people that aren't members of our church, the seminary is something that the high school age kids that they go to. And in our area, there's a lot of members, so it's like they can have it as a class during the day. But in other regions, they'll do it early morning, and it's just a random, like you were employed as a seminary teacher
for like $12 an hour.
Yeah,
that's right. Now, but a lot of times it's just purely voluntary.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Which they don't have as many classes, but they still are waking up early.
They do.
And
Yeah.
they have to prep every day.
No, it's amazing. It would be a tough thing.
Hardest,
to do,
probably
for sure.
hardest one, maybe outside of the clergy bishop guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think doing that told me, you know what, the law is a good idea.
It's not that bad.
You have to feel some pain before you.
I had to feel a little bit of pain, and I went into the law, and we kept our accounts receivable.
Mm-hmm.
So we had several $1 million in accounts receivable that I continued to be the one watching over and working on collecting during this time. But I had my buddy from high school, good friend of mine, Ryan McFarland. He's a great attorney, just brilliant. And I really liked the guys at the firm. There's 6 of us now. And it was just a different situation. It wasn't that situation where I was coming out of law school and you were going to work 80 hours and billable hours were going to be, just shoved down your throat. I set my own hours, and I'm essentially my own. I'm kind of in business for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and so
when you get the check, is it a W-2 or is it a 1099?
it's a 1099.
It's a 1099. Well, that's by legal definition, you are in business for yourself.
I am
right?
in business
That's
for
right.
myself, and I can do my own advertising, and I know how to advertise. So
You've been there a few years. Yeah.
get my own clients. That wasn't an issue, and set my own hours, and even if I felt like somebody couldn't afford my services, I could work for free, or I could work for a lesser amount. So I've got a lot of flexibility there, and I really appreciate my firm for letting me do that. And
So why choose a firm? Just because? What's the advantage to you?
Yeah. So the advantage to me was in law school, you learn all the basics,
Mm-hmm.
and you learn the theory, but you've got to learn in the real world. And I knew a bunch of the business stuff from the last 15 years of working at Impact. But other things like estate planning, like litigation and those
So it's
things.
like a homie to be able to call and be like, hey, how do I do this? Or even refer?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. And the firm gives me business too.
So you're focused on the business side, business contract law, and they'll refer to you sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
It's just a good setup for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, if you need business getting, I mean, we have a lot of, I know we have aspiring entrepreneurs listening. Some of my nephews even talk about, hey, how do I start a business now after listening to your podcast? There we go. He can help you.
There you go.
Yeah.
Get Seth involved, right?
Easy to do.
Established. Yeah. Yep.
But I've definitely talked to clients who've done it wrong, and
Yeah.
later on have had big issues. So
So a couple, if you don't mind, a few follow-up questions. What would be some of the main lessons you think were learned during Impact Directories time, like your time there? I mean, what would be some of those, I don't know, bits of wisdom?
yeah, so one of them that I've touched on a few times would be track everything. I think we dealt in the phone book with a lot of skepticism that it still worked, that it still delivered results. When you're just a religious tracker, when every single person that comes through the door or everybody that calls you, you figure out why they came, you can be a lot more focused and you can be a lot more...
Like marketing dollars is what you're saying.
yeah, with marketing dollars and also other efforts. It's the 80-20 rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 80% of what comes... 80% of what you do is let's see, dang it.
It's Pareto's law, right?
Pareto's
80%
law.
80% of business comes from 20% of the source. Yeah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So that 20% you just want to lock on, and that's how you leverage. That's how you
Double down on that. Yeah.
Um,
But if you don't know, if you don't have it tracked, right, you don't know what to, yeah.
if you don't know, you don't know. And then you're just throwing stuff blindly at the wall and seeing what sticks.
That probably helps in you selling even because you can say, well, we can guarantee, look how many phone calls this number got for plumbing companies.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it made a great selling proposal. But even then, people would see it and they'd see it right in front of their face and say, oh, phone books are dying.
Yeah. Even though you can guarantee them phone calls. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think another big takeaway is if you're going into business for yourself, you want to find one of those businesses that I talked about where once you pay for your expenses, then everything else, you're going to have some expenses on the rest of your sales, but everything else is gravy.
Leverage.
Just a great business to be in. If I could find another one of those businesses.
Yeah, it's leverage. Exactly. It's the scaling. You have a medium that's reproducible. Income. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And maybe the last lesson would be that if you're just an entrepreneur and you're interested in making money and making life better for people, for your customers and employing people and that's where you get your thrill, then go into something that, don't be afraid to go into something that doesn't sound very interesting to other people. Porta potties, right?
Which could be, honestly. I think about that's an unsexy business, but
Oh, I'm sure it's huge. I'm sure they do very well.
tons of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think there's so many lessons you can learn from seeing a company from start to finish, right? And like seeing the iterations that it goes through. And that's why I thought your perspective would be really interesting in coming in and discussing that. What other questions you guys have? Anything for Seth Areno?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it's obviously a very interesting story, and thank you for sharing it with us, and that you continue to advertise through the phone book.
Love that. Honestly, that's
phone
someone
book
who's
is
converted.
not dead.
Yeah.
Right?
The thing is, it's a long tail. This is what you got to think of, that even if that percent, a lot of people aren't. People move away from it, which makes it easier for you. Those long tail it's a big deal.
I'll tell you, the people who call me from it for estate planning, those are the ads that I've got in, is for wills and trusts and those types of things. They're just the nicest people in the world. They're in their 70s or 80s or upper 60s, and they're always just so kind, and they think that I'm the best. And it's like, if you think about what kind of customer, if they came through the door, would I want the most of? If You know, if I could have any type of customer that come into my business who I wanted, and I had complete choice over who that was, what would they look like? A lot of times it's someone who's older because they have money.
Yeah.
They're not going to complain about every little expense, although they want you to do a good job.
Right. They're respecting the work more than the dollar. Yeah.
Yeah. And in most of situations, they need your services, especially with these small businesses that provide services.
Yeah. My in-laws in Jerome, small town, still have a home phone on top of a phone book. So, I mean, it's still there.
Yeah, that's another lesson to, we talk about aspiring entrepreneurs, and, we've talked about doing businesses that aren't super interesting. And I think one thing, or the first thing you think of with phone books right now is to say, like, they're dead, right? Why would I ever look at that? And it's like, well, they're still around. And so there's all these little areas of opportunity, and you can't just be quick to shut those off because you never know, right? Until you go look, and yeah, it may not be the coolest thing to tell your friends that, hey, I'm in the phone book business, but like you said, there's a lot of money. So I say to those aspiring entrepreneurs, don't be quick to shut down these ideas or opportunities.
Yeah. Right on.
All right. Seth, thanks for telling the story.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was awesome to hear your perspective. How do people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of Seth Hansen at McFarland Ritter?
You can call 208-559-7167.
Awesome.
Or you can look up McFarland Ritter. We have a website.
Perfect. Awesome.
Or look in the phone book.
Check out the phone book. That's awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Founders Podcast. Be sure to follow the host on Twitter. Search @JordB Hansen and @Brandon Minard to discuss more. Also, be sure to visit